Thank you for inviting me to be a guest speaker here. I'm very honored to do this for your group. So this is called The Occupation of Hong Kong and the Life of a Veteran. And like I was saying previously, it took me 20 years of research to come up with this PowerPoint. So let me give you a bit of background. Oh, let me just click this here. Okay, to provide you with some background, in 1841, after losing the First Opium War, China ceded Hong Kong Island to Great Britain. The city of Victoria on the island became its capital. In 1860, China ceded Kowloon on the mainland to Great Britain. In 1853, when the resident British troops were reassigned to fight in the Crimean War, Lieutenant Colonel William Kane advocated the creation of a civilian defense force, and the Hong Kong Volunteer Defense Corps, also known as the Volunteers, was established in 1854. In 1898, Hong Kong acquired property known as the New Territories on the mainland, along with outlying islands under a 99-year lease with China to expire on July 1st, 1997. My father, Henry Souza, was born in Hong Kong in July 1921. In 1938, at the age of 17, he joined the Hong Kong Volunteer Defense Corps. Here is a picture of him in 1939 when he was a member of the 3rd Battery, consisting of naval 6-inch guns. During that time, there were 3 banks issuing circulating currency in Hong Kong. The Hong Kong and Shanghai Banking Corporation. Here's an example of its 1935 $1 banknote and its $5 banknote, also from 1941. The second bank was the Chartered Bank of India, Australia, and China. And here's an example of its 1941 $5 note. And an example of the 1941 $10 note. The last bank to issue circulating currency was the Mercantile Bank of India. And here's an example of the 1941 $5. The government of Hong Kong also issued its own banknotes, and here is an example of the $1 note issued in 1940 and 1941. At that time, there were only three coins in circulation: the 1 cent, the 5 cent, and 10 cents. All coins were minted in England and shipped to Hong Kong. When war began in Europe in 1939, Japan had already been at war with China since 1937. To protest the invasion of China and to curb its military expansion, an oil embargo was imposed against Japan. Hong Kong newspaper accounts from 1939 hinted that war with Japan was inevitable. Sometime between 1939 and 1941, my father was posted to the field ambulance unit of the Volunteers. On February 26, 1941, Hong Kong issued 6 stamps to commemorate the 100th anniversary of British sovereignty over Hong Kong. Almost a year later, the Japanese army would celebrate its occupation of Hong Kong. That same year, Hong Kong began to experience a shortage of 1 cent, 5 cent, and 10 cent coins, and the government claimed that these coins were being smuggled to Shanghai and sold to Japanese agents for their metal to assist the Japanese in their war efforts. In May 1941, the Hong Kong government had to issue 1 cent paper notes, and later, in October, they also issued 5 cent and 10 cent notes to cover this shortage. War began on December 8, 1941, when 52,000 soldiers of the Japanese 23rd Army swarmed across the border from China into Hong Kong. To oppose them were 14,000 Allied soldiers consisting of Canadian, British, and volunteer units. In 40 hours, they overcame the defenses held by British forces along the Shinmun Redoubt and the Gin Drinkers Line, defined by the zigzag red lines on this map. The city of Kowloon on the mainland fell to the Japanese on December 12th, and the remaining defenders retreated to Hong Kong Island. Now, if you've been to Hong Kong, you will notice the iconic clock tower, which is next to the Star Ferry. That is still standing, and it was there in 1941. When the British were under siege on Hong Kong Island, there emerged a shortage of coins and $1 banknotes. The shortage of the $1 banknotes arose when the Japanese distributed leaflets warning that all notes over $10 would be worthless after the Japanese took over the colony. To relieve the situation, a stock of the Bank of China 5 yuan notes were discovered on the premises of the Commercial Press Limited in Hong Kong in Kings Road, North Point. These notes were printed Hong Kong government $1 and released for circulation on the 13th of December, 1941. The Japanese successfully invaded Hong Kong Island on December 18th and split the Allied forces consisting of British units, Hong Kong Volunteer Defense Corps units, and Canadian troops. It was during one of the battles on December 19th that Sergeant Major John Osborne of the Winnipeg Grenadiers was posthumously awarded the Victoria Cross when he threw himself on top of a Japanese grenade to save his men. This was the only Victoria Cross awarded during the battle. By December 24th, the Japanese had captured most of Hong Kong Island. On Christmas Day 1941, the Allied troops were ordered by Governor Mark Young to surrender. The order reads to Brigadier Wallace, the GOC, which is General Officer Commanding, authorizes me to state that the white flag will be hoisted and all military operations will cease forthwith. You will consider yourselves prisoners of war. Issue orders to all commands to cease fighting. Steward for GOC British forces in China. At that time, my father was in Fort Stanley, situated in the southern part of the island. This Japanese propaganda postcard depicts the surrender talks between Governor Mark Young and Japanese Lieutenant General Takashi Sakai on Christmas Day. My father and the other Allied troops became POWs and were sent to Sam Shui Po POW camp on the mainland. The Japanese prepared an index card on each prisoner of war, and at the end of the war, these records were seized and kept at the National Archives in the United Kingdom. In 2016, when I visited London, I went to the National Archives and found my father's POW card. The English translations of the Japanese entries are in red. So here we have the camp name or the camp administration, Sendai. The preceding camp administration was Tokyo. His date of birth was July 12th, 1921. Nationality was Portuguese. January 7th, 1942 was probably the date that this card was created. His rank was private. Where he was captured was a Hong Kong Island defense ground. The date of capture was December 25th, 1941, Christmas Day. It gave his father's name, his mother's name, her occupation as secretary, and where she lived. The reverse provides details of his incarceration. The middle of the card states that on July 25th, 1943, he was hospitalized for chronic bronchitis and was discharged from hospital on August 13th, 1943. The top of the card indicates that on May 14th, 1944, he was transferred to the Tokyo Camp Administration from Hong Kong, and later on April 14th, 1945, he was transferred to the Sendai Camp Administration. The bottom of the card states that on September 9th, 1945, he was transferred to Captain Candlewood at Port Yumoto. I will have more on this part of his life later. This photo shows Lieutenant General Sakai entering Hong Kong in his victory parade. He became the second military governor of Hong Kong until February 1942, when he retired from active service in 1943. Kaneo Inouye was a second-generation Japanese Canadian born in Kamloops, British Columbia. He was studying in Japan when the war began, and in 1942 he was recruited as an interpreter and sent to Samshui camp in Hong Kong. Inouye was also a member of the Kempe Tai, the Japanese equivalent of the German Gestapo, and was particularly cruel towards Canadian prisoners. The prisoners nicknamed him the Kamloops Kid, where he was living, and Slap Happy due to his penchant for slapping prisoners for no reason. The coinage for Hong Kong was also affected by the war. All Hong Kong coins were minted in England, and according to the records at the British Royal Mint, there were 5 shipments of the 1941 1-cent coins. After the war started, one shipment was unloaded in South Africa, returned to the mint, and melted down. The fate of the remaining 4 shipments is unknown, and there are rumors that one shipment was sunk by a German or Japanese submarine, and another shipment was captured by the Japanese in Hong Kong and melted down for the war. None of the 5-cent coins destined for Hong Kong were shipped, and most were melted down for the nickel to be used in the war effort. Surviving specimens are some of the rarest of Hong Kong coins. These stamps were printed in 1941 by Bradbury Wilkinson, but due to the start of the war, they could not be delivered to Hong Kong until after the liberation. The official issue date for this series was changed to August 28th, 1946. After their victory, the Japanese used the Hong Kong and Shanghai Bank building as its headquarters for the administration of Hong Kong. The Japanese soldiers shot one bank official to intimidate the others to open the vaults. In the vaults, there were unissued banknotes totaling 119,800,000. Although half of these banknotes were already signed, they had no value because the bank had not yet acquired the reserves that were required by law before they could be issued. In any event, the Japanese forced the bank officials to issue them. These issued notes became known as duress notes. The notes consisted of the 1934 issue of the $50 note shown here and the 1934, 1936, and 1937 issues of the $100 note and the 1936 and 1937 issues of the $500 note. When the war ended, all these duress notes were honored by the bank. The Japanese issued an order limiting the use of Hong Kong currency to $10 and introduced the military yen to the population. The Japanese reopened the Hong Kong branch of the Yokohama Specie Bank and made it the official issuer of the military yen. Citizens were required to exchange Hong Kong currency at a rate of $2 for one military yen. For a short while, Hong Kong currency was allowed to circulate with the military yen. The initial 3 military yen were overprinted notes printed in August 1938 for use in southern China. The red overprints crossed out the name Bank of Japan, and the four red characters identified them as Japanese Imperial Government military notes. The 3 notes in the series were 1 yen, overprinted series 5 yen, and the overprinted 10 yen. Later, the Japanese also circulated the first series, which was printed in December 1938. These 3 notes omitted the name Bank of Japan and incorporated the previously overprinted inscription into the design. Again, they were 1 yen, first series 5 yen, and the first series 10 yen. The second series included notes of a smaller size and smaller denominations that were printed in November 1940. These notes have 11 characters along the top that translate as Imperial Japanese Government Military Note and had no serial number. They consisted of the 1 sen, the 5 sen, the 10 sen, 50 sen, second series 1 yen, 5 yen, 10 yen, and after that, they issued a third series. A third series of notes similar to second series notes were also issued. The only difference between the third series and the second series is that these notes have only 7 characters rather than 11 along the top here, and they now have had a serial number 38 on this note. So those were the only difference. They shortened this to 7 characters and started giving them serial numbers. The removal of the 4 characters deleted the reference to military notes. They were issued in 1 sen, 5 sen, 10 sen, 50 sen, 1 yen. And you can see here they actually have not only a plate number, but they actually have a serial number for the 1 yen. The 5 yen, again, a proper serial number and a plate number. 10 yen. And they also introduced, for the third series, a 100 yen. This banknote with a denomination of 2.5 ren was printed but never issued for use. This example was offered at a recent John Bull auction for $12,000 but did not sell. And actually, all the previous ones that you've seen, those were all in my collection, and I only needed this one to finish the complete set, but not at $12,000. I just couldn't afford it. On July 24th, 1942, the military yen was revalued at 4 Hong Kong dollars to 1 military yen, and the military yen was made the sole legal tender in Hong Kong. The Japanese severely punished anyone caught using Hong Kong dollars. The Japanese also introduced 20 of their definitive stamps for use in Hong Kong. These are just examples of the stamps used but they're not canceled in Hong Kong. The last three stamps at the bottom here, at the bottom right, were overprinted with new values and issued in 1945, and they're very expensive. Here's an example of the Hong Kong occupation mail using four of the Japanese stamps. On December 8th, 1942, the first anniversary of the war, the Japanese issued a set of two pictorial postcards. One depicts the Hong Kong race course, and the other depicts the sinking of the British training ship HMS Tamar that was moored in Hong Kong harbor when the war began. On the same day, the Japanese also issued three postcards to their soldiers to commemorate the first anniversary of the war. The three postcards came in a paper folder with a note explaining each of the postcards. The first postcard commemorated the attack on Pearl Harbor. On the reverse, all three postcards have the same printed stamp value with a value of 2 sen. Here it is, 2 sen, and the image of a samurai warrior. The second postcard commemorated the attack and capture of an anti-aircraft battery in Hong Kong. And the third postcard commemorated the British surrender of Singapore. Between 1942 and 1944, the Japanese issued several postcards for the public's use. They are very plain with a printed value in the corner. This one is with a 2 sen value below the image of a mounted warrior. This postcard is one with a 10 sen stamp depicting the Nagoya Castle. And here we have a postcard with the original 2 sen value, which was overprinted with a 1.5 yen overprint and is believed to have been issued later in the war. I have little information about these two postcards. They are described in the catalog as military affairs postcards, and on one, the stamp value is replaced with a picture of a perched dove, and on the other, a 5-pointed star. In 1944, the Japanese issued three 100 military yen notes for use. Here we have the 1944 100 military yen in the style of the overprint series. And that was followed by the 100 military yen note printed in yellow-green in the style of the first series. And lastly, the first series 100 military yen printed in black. So while all this was going on in Hong Kong, my father languished in Sam Shui Po prison camp from 1941 until April of 1944. On April 29th, 1944, he, along with 47 Canadians and 137 Hong Kong Volunteer Defense Corps prisoners, were embarked on a ship called the Nauru Maru, bound for Japan. En route, it stopped over in Formosa, then went through Nagasaki and Hiroshima, and arrived in Moji on March 27, 1944. This was the last prisoner transport to leave Hong Kong, and they were very lucky to arrive in Japan. At that stage of the war, the American submarines were sinking practically anything that approached Japan. Several Japanese transports with Allied prisoners en route to Japan were sunk by American submarines with a huge loss of POW lives. The reason is that when the When the Japanese put the prisoners on board these ships, they did not put any Red Cross markings to indicate that they were Red Cross ships with POWs. So everything was fair game to the American submarines. And very unfortunate because a lot of the POW transports were all sunk by American submarines that had no idea that they were full of Allied POWs. He was sent by train to Sendai Camp Number 2 to work at the Iwaki coal mine located at a village called Yoshima. I'll go back one spot here. I'll go back to the previous spot. So they landed in Hiroshima and at Moji, and then got transported by train up to Sendai. And at Sendai, this is where his camp was. So it was a village called Yoshima, and he was sent to Sendai Camp Number 2. There they mined coal in two 12-hour shifts. Every night, each prisoner was allowed to bring back a 1 pound lump of coal to heat their barracks. Food usually consisted of barley mixed with rice, and for working down in a mine, they each received a bun. The buns were either eaten or used as currency by the prisoners. 6 buns could be exchanged for a tin of corned beef or spam from the Red Cross parcels. Here's a photo of him in Japan on Christmas Day 1944. In the photo, he is seated in the second row behind the goat. Note the Red Cross parcels right in front of the prisoners. Now, technically, every prisoner was supposed to receive a Red Cross parcel once a month. But usually the way it worked is that the Japanese usually took all the Red Cross parcels, and each parcel had to be shared among several prisoners. The Red Cross parcels did not arrive regularly, and often each parcel had to be shared among several prisoners. Very often, the Japanese guards pilfered the parcels for what they could use before giving the rest to the prisoners. Although the prisoners were also paid wages of 10 cents for each day they worked in the mine, there was nothing to buy in the camp, so it was used for gambling. The prisoners very often also used cigarettes from the Red Cross parcels as currency to acquire items from other prisoners. In the next picture, he's behind the white table and he's the person facing the other prisoners. He was in the church choir before the war, and he said he was leading the prisoners in singing Christmas carols. This is one entrance to the coal mine taken after the war on August 28, 1945. This picture was obtained from my brother-in-law, whose father was also a POW in the same camp. On August 15, 1945, Japan ceased hostilities, and I have two photos of my father taken on August 28, 1945. In the first photo, he's seated at the front row, third from the right, wearing a hat. In the second photo, he is seated in the middle row, second from the right. At that time, he was 24 years old, and he told me he only weighed 80 pounds. At war's end, the Japanese were asked to prepare a roster of prisoners in each camp. I found a copy of the Sendai Camp Number 2 roster on the internet. This excerpt lists my father third from the bottom as prisoner 179. And if you look at the list, right below him, there's two other Souzas, one Leo Souza and one Roberto Souza. They were both cousins of his and both in the same camp. Another website provided me with an aerial view of Sendai Camp Number 2, taken on September 2nd, by American planes as they dropped food supplies to the prisoners. Sadly, on that day, my dad told me that one American prisoner, Sergeant Joseph Serrata, died when one of the food pallets tore away from the parachute and crushed him. Can you imagine spending all that time in a prisoner of war camp just to get killed by food on was a liberation? The camp was liberated on September 7th and evacuated on September 9th. According to my father's POW index card, he was handed over to a Captain Candlewood at Port Yamato. Some of the ex-POWs were taken by train down to Yokohama, where they were processed for repatriation. This picture of aircraft carrier HMS Colossus hangar shows the cots laying out to accommodate the former POWs. En route to Japan, the planes were pushed over the side to create space. This picture also came from my brother-in-law's files. The former POWs were taken to the Philippines for rest and recuperation for 2 weeks before being repatriated back to Hong Kong. On September 1st, 1945, when the British military reassumed the administration of Hong Kong, the currency issue had to be resolved. But until new Hong Kong banknotes arrived, there was no option but to allow the circulation of the Japanese military yen to continue. The plates for a never issued Japanese 1,000 yen note were found, and a decision was made by the British military administration to re-engrave the plates to strike through the 7 characters, add a denomination of $1 and the phrase Hong Kong government. These were never issued and were eventually destroyed. Surviving examples are very valuable. In addition, stocks of the Central Reserve Bank of China 1,000 yuan notes and 5,000 yuan notes were discovered at the Chonghua Book Company in Kowloon. The 1,000 yuan notes were overprinted with Hong Kong government $5 and the 5,000 yuan notes with Hong Kong government $10. The overprinting and numbering was done by the old printery and were held in the vaults of the Hong Kong and Shanghai Banking Corporation. However, before these notes could be released, government notes printed in the UK arrived. These overprinted notes were held until February 1946, and then they were burned. Records show 2.4 million $5 notes were overprinted. Again, any surviving examples are very valuable. To alleviate the shortage of legitimate currency, the Hong Kong and Shanghai Bank located some $5 notes printed in 1940 and 1941. They were issued after adding a supplemental 4-digit serial number vertically on the face, right here, and on the back of the note here, to distinguish them from $5 notes issued by the Japanese during the war. The location of the additional serial numbers are highlighted by the red arrows. The government of Hong Kong issued some of the earliest notes in 1945. These were 3 small unifaced notes of 1 cent, 5 cents, and 10 cents. And don't ask me why, but the 5-cent banknotes, which I used to use when I was a child, are now about $30 each. I don't know why, they've just jumped up in value. On September 6, 1945, the Japanese Ministry of Finance announced that all military yen notes were void. Overnight, the military yen literally became worthless pieces of paper to the people of Hong Kong. On September 16, 1945, Japanese Major General Okada and Vice Admiral Fujita signed the instrument of surrender pictured on the right. On August 29, 1946, Hong Kong issued 2 stamps to commemorate the Allied victory. The stamps depicted a phoenix rising from the flames, symbolizing the rebuilding of Hong Kong after the war. So what happened to Kaneo Inouye after the war. After the war ended in August 1945, Inouye was identified in Kowloon by liberated Canadian prisoners and was arrested. The Kamloops kid was then tried for war crimes by a military tribunal for being involved in the deaths of several Canadian soldiers. He was convicted and sentenced to death. However, the verdict was overturned on appeal because, as a Canadian citizen, he could not be prosecuted for war crimes committed by enemy soldiers. In April 1947, Inouye was tried on a criminal charge of treason. He was again found guilty, and on August 27, 1947, he was hanged at a Hong Kong prison. He was the only Canadian executed for treason in World War II. At the end of the war, the former military governor of Hong Kong was found guilty of war crimes in China and executed by firing squad on September 30th, 1946. The Hong Kong and Shanghai Banking Corporation's first post-war notes were issued on March 30th, 1946. They consisted of a $5 note and $10 note, and here we have an example of the $5 note. The Chartered Bank of India, Australia, and China began reissuing notes in 1948 and also consisted of a $5 and $10 note. And here's an example of the 5. The Mercantile Bank of India also resumed issuing notes in 1948, but were only in $100 denominations. On April 9th, 1947, my mom and dad got married. In 1949, my father was a member of the renamed Hong Kong Defense Force and became a marksman. In 1951, the Hong Kong Defense Force was granted the title Royal Hong Kong Defense Force, and in 1961, the unit was renamed the Hong Kong Regiment, and in 1970 to the Royal Hong Kong Regiment. On September 8, 1951, 49 nations signed the Treaty of San Francisco. It officially served to end the Second World War with Japan and became effective on April 25th, 1952. So although everybody recognizes 1945 as the end of the war, technically the war with Japan did not end until the Treaty of San Francisco took effect in 1952. Under the terms of the treaty, Japan agreed to reimburse the occupied nations and under Article 16 agreed to donate £4,500,000 to the Red Cross for POWs that suffered undue hardship. Remember Article 16 because it becomes relevant later. Between 1950 and 1967, my father entered numerous local shooting events and won over 200 awards. He became one of Hong Kong's premier sportsmen. In 1958, Japan hosted the Third Asian Games in Tokyo and issued this first day cover with 4 commemorative stamps to celebrate this event. My father returned to Tokyo, this time as an athlete representing Hong Kong at the Third Asian Games. He's pictured second from the right. At the Games, he won the bronze medal for Hong Kong in rifle shooting and is pictured on a podium. Here's a picture of the bronze medal and a third-place diploma which accompanied the medal. In 1959, Prince Philip visited Hong Kong, and on March 7th, he and my mother were both invited to meet him on board his yacht Britannia. And here's the invitation to meet Prince Philip. In 1960, he represented Hong Kong at the Olympic Games in Rome. Here he is pictured with his Anschutz competition rifle. The Hong Kong Olympic contingent only consisted of 5 athletes, 4 shooters and 1 swimmer. Here, the Hong Kong contingent enters the Olympic Stadium. My father ranked 44th in his event. Italy did not issue any coins to commemorate the Olympics. Instead, they issued the following commemorative stamps and postcards, and my father had them mailed to himself at the Olympic Village. This is the 1960 Olympic 5 postcard set, number 1 and number 2. As you can see, he's got down here his name, Hong Kong Contingent, Olympic Village, Rome, Italy. This is card number 1 and 2. This is card number 3 and 4. This is card number 5. Prior to the start of the 1964 Olympic Games, my father was one of 7 athletes interviewed for an article called The Tokyo Games, and it was published in the October 1964 issue of Sports Illustrated. It was a very short article. I still have the magazine in a family, and here it's covered over here until the end here. He again represented Hong Kong at the Olympic Games in Tokyo and ranked 39th in his event. Japan issued 2 silver coins, a 100 yen and a 1,000 yen, to commemorate the 1964 Olympics. In addition, they also issued 4 souvenir postcards that my father put on this postcard, and again had it mailed to himself at the Olympic Village. Oh, sorry, I went past too far. In addition, they also issued 4 souvenir stamps that my father put on this postcard, and again had it mailed to himself at the Olympic Village. In 1966, he represented Hong Kong at the 5th Asian Games and came in 5th in his event. Thailand issued a 1 baht coin to commemorate the 5th Asian Games, and also issued 8 stamps shown here to commemorate the Games. He was a member of the Hong Kong Regiment, but he was also a member of the regiment's sniper section. So he was one of 6 snipers trained in Hong Kong. And here he is shown wearing camouflage headgear, taking a break from his training. Here we have a picture of him with all his trophies. There's a picture of our family in 1967. He and my mom raised 6 kids. And in 1968, our family immigrated to Vancouver, Canada. Because he was one of Hong Kong's noted sportsmen, his departure was reported in the newspaper. If we did not immigrate to Canada, he would have represented Hong Kong in the 1968 Olympic Games in Mexico City. In 1972, my parents celebrated their 25th wedding anniversary. One of the proudest moments in our family was obtaining our Canadian citizenship in 1973. In September 1974, my sister gave birth to her first son, and my parents became grandparents. This picture was taken on Christmas Day, 1974. Five months later, at the age of 53, on May 8th, 1975, he died of a heart attack at home. But that's not quite the end of the story. On Christmas Day 1991, the UK issued this cover to commemorate the 50th anniversary of the capitulation of Hong Kong. The issue was limited to 750 covers. In August 1995, the government issued this first day cover with four commemorative stamps to recognize the Royal Hong Kong Regiment's 141 years of service. On September 2nd, the government disbanded the Royal Hong Kong Regiment in anticipation of the handover of Hong Kong back to China on July 1st, 1997. In September 1995, the Philatelic Bureau of Hong Kong issued this cover to commemorate the 50th anniversary of the signing of the surrender documents and the liberation of Hong Kong. Only 88 of these special covers were issued, and I think mine is number 75, I believe. Many civilians had kept wartime military yen and had been petitioning successive Japanese governments to redeem their military yen. Many of them had become destitute after being forced to trade Hong Kong dollars for their military yen. Even as late as 1999, court cases have been launched against the Japanese government. All were unsuccessful. Why? The Japanese government cited the 1951 Treaty of San Francisco that required Japan to reimburse nations that it occupied. And because these payments were made on a national level, there was no provision to reimburse the claimants on an individual level. As a result, many civilians that lived through the occupation went to their graves still possessing bundles of worthless Japanese military yen. Many Far East Veterans Associations have also lobbied successive Japanese governments to reimburse them for their time spent as POWs and slave laborers. This time, the Japanese government cited Article 16 of the 1951 Treaty of San Francisco to deny payments. If you recall, Article 16 of the treaty required Japan to pay £4.5 million to the Red Cross for POWs that suffered undue hardship. And that clause absolved Japan of all future compensation to the POWs. In 2001, the British government decided to pay its surviving Far East POWs or their widows a one-time £10,000 payment to recognize their wartime suffering. But by the time, many veterans or their widows were no longer around to collect. In 2007, a researcher in Japan found documents in a national library that Japan had been selling opium in China during the war to back the value of the military scrip that was issued. Ironically, the British were selling opium back in 1841 that resulted in a war, in the first Opium War, that made China cede to them Hong Kong. And now Japan was doing exactly the same in the Second World War. And finally, in 2016, the Royal Canadian Mint issued a $20 coin to commemorate the 75th anniversary of the Winnipeg Grenadiers and the Royal Rifles of Canada's participation in defending Hong Kong in 1941. The obverse bears the wartime effigy of George VI. Christmas 2021 was the 80th anniversary of the surrender of Hong Kong, and if my father was still alive, he would have been 100 years old. And that ends my presentation. Now we'll stop sharing and get back to the meeting.
Thank you, Michael. Very interesting story.
I hope it's not too long.
No, that's perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
While we wait for some questions, I have a curiosity. The last name, Souza, that's a Portuguese last name, and you share a document that shows your father with a Portuguese nationality.
Yes.
So
yes.
did you guys migrated from Macau, or there was a Portuguese presence in Hong Kong at the time?
Well, when we were kids, we were told that when my aunt died, she adopted my father because she, boys are always good because they can carry on the family name, right? Well, what we were told as kids is that she married a Portuguese by name of Souza. So
Oh,
when she adopted my father, everybody in the family changed the name of Souza and we
gotcha.
carried on.
Okay.
Now, whether that's true or not, I don't know because everybody that knows the true story have all passed away because we we my sister's husband is Macanese. He's also Portuguese, and we started making some inquiries about our family name.
Hmm.
And apparently, we think there was some hanky-panky between my grandmother and the person she married because there's a 30-year difference between them. So we think that at one time, my grandmother was either a babysitter to his kids or a nanny to the kids or a servant in the household that that the husband
Yeah.
had an affair with. And we think that two of the kids were from out of wedlock. And then when the wife died, she ended up marrying the nanny. That's why there's a 30-year difference in their ages. We didn't know that. And we think that my dad and another one was born after they were married. I don't think he was adopted. So, but
Interesting.
again, the true story, nobody knows anymore. Maybe when I see my dad when I die, I'll ask him, what the heck's going on? But
And and and
when you're kids, nobody tells you anything.
yeah, exactly. And one final curiosity before we turn it to Mauricio.
Yeah.
Macau and Hong Kong are pretty close, but during the occupation, were they treated as a single unit or they keep their own identity, knowing that they have different influences?
Okay. Portugal was technically um, a neutral during the war.
Oh,
So they
okay.
never,
So Macau
so
was left alone then.
no, they had to leave it alone.
Okay.
Even though a lot of the people fought for the British,
Yeah,
they left Macau alone. But behind the scenes, the Japanese were I heard that the Japanese were dictating a lot of the policies for Macau. They would not occupy it because they couldn't, but they also dictated a lot of policy for Macau because a lot of the refugees uh, moved over to Macau to get away from the Japanese. The
gotcha.
Japanese didn't like that, but they couldn't occupy it. So they started to create policy that the the Macanese government had to follow.
Got it. Thank you. I didn't know that, but that was fascinating. Anyways, Mauricio.
First of all, Michael, thank you very much for this very interesting presentation that you just gave us. I have a few questions. Um, when you mentioned that the Japanese found the HSBC banknotes at the vault, that they wanted to be circulated, and the bank um, personnel told them that no, because they didn't have the um, backing,
Right, the reserves.
the
Yeah.
reserve, but they eventually did circulate them. I assume that caused an inflation in Hong Kong because you have currency with no reserves circulating. Did that happen in Hong Kong during that time?
There's probably some inflation happening because at a later date, initially they made them change $2 Hong Kong for one Japanese yen.
Mm-hmm.
But later they made them exchange 4 Hong Kong dollars
Oh,
to
yeah.
get one Japanese
Mm,
yen. So inflation must have happened. But at the same time, they allowed all these bank or the two currencies to
Mm-hmm.
to be used simultaneously.
Oh, I see.
Okay. But then eventually they said, no, you can only use Japanese yen. But was there any inflation? Yes, there probably was.
Okay, perfect. And the other question, regarding those occupation overprinted stamps, are there any inverted overprints known? And was that overprint made in Japan or made locally in Hong Kong? I missed that part maybe.
Okay. Initially, they took 20 of their domestic
Mm-hmm.
stamps that they use in Japan, moved them over to Hong Kong and said, you guys, everybody in Hong Kong now they all have to use Japanese stamps. Okay. But then the cancel was
Mm-hmm.
specially created. They created a special cancel for Hong Kong for the
Uh-huh.
ones that were used in Hong Kong. Those are expensive. Okay.
But
But most of them were just the routine domestic Japanese stamps. And I actually found most of them here in Vancouver. But those are just canceled over in Japan. But
oh, I
if you
see.
want to buy those that are canceled in Hong Kong, I think it's quite expensive.
Oh, okay.
But then the three that were overprinted
Mm-hmm.
came out at near the end of the war. The
Yeah.
three 1945s, those are very expensive. I believe there's one, and of course I couldn't afford them. So I
Mhm.
took a photo, I cheated. I scanned it and I took a photocopy of the scan to put onto the PowerPoint. But one is about, I think the last one is about $350 for one
Ooh,
stamp.
yeah.
Mm.
But no invert overprints, no.
None that
Like
I'm
a
aware
mistake.
of.
Okay,
It's a
perfect.
very
And
short run.
final question, Mecca. Um, that one of the last covers that you showed us, commemorating the 50th anniversary of the liberation of Hong Kong. Why only 88 covers were made? Is there any explanation for that? That the Hong Kong Post only issued a so limited number of covers?
Okay, you know the number eight is very lucky for
I
Chinese.
know, yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
not everything is eight. If you have a license number, all eights, they pay
Hmm.
$100,000 just to get that license plate. It's stupid.
Oh,
But
oh,
eight is synonymous with good luck. So
oh,
th-
mhm.
the Philatelic Bureau only issued 88. So I guess it's supposed to be good luck because it was for the liberation of Hong Kong. But why did they do only 88? I don't know.
They should have done 888.
Exactly. Exactly. But I've got one right now and I don't know what to do with it. I'll probably, because let's face it, I turned 70 at the end of this year and none of my kids are interested in any of my coins. I've already sold all my stamps. I still have a couple of covers around, one of which is that one. But I've sold most of my collection now because to leave it to my kids, they're going to throw it all away. They don't know what it is. So anybody interested in Hong Kong cover? Number 70, I think it's 75. So why only 88? I don't know. But the Philatelic Bureau, that's all they put out.
That's very interesting. Yeah. For a place with uh, so high population, only 88 covers, I believe they must have been sold in a few hours or minutes. They should have sold the 88 covers. But yeah, that's very interesting fact. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Thanks for your questions. Anybody else?
Uh,
Yeah.
we have
Hi.
Will.
Yeah, thank you very much for your presentation. It was very interesting, informational, and
Thank you.
entertaining. As we mentioned at the beginning of the this talk, we have over 800 videos here, and I have watched a few that are as personal as this one. But I have to say, I think this is the most touching that I have, uh, you know, watched and actually listen to. Very, very touching, and in more than one way. It's a very basically a roller coaster of emotions to listen to your that um, life by being, in the military and then capture
Yes.
and then, release and then being in the Olympics and finally, with the grand daughter on their slab with your mom. That's amazing. So first of all, thank you for this 20 years work shown in this presentation, and also thanks to your dad, your father, for his service, whatever he is. I have a couple of questions. Well, I have several, but I'm going to let me see. So one of them is, what's next? Do you think there are areas you mentioned that you've been working on this for 20 years? Do you think there are any areas out there that are still worth exploring or that can be further expanded? That's question number one. Question number two is after occupation, you said you mentioned that the first banknotes didn't have serial numbers, and then the first one has the number 38, if I remember correctly,
Hmm.
with the parentheses around it. And
Yes.
then the next ones also have not just serial number, but also plate numbers. And the plate numbers have the parentheses around it. So are
Yes.
you sure that the first one is serial number and not just plate number without an actual serial number?
Well, okay. First to answer, your first question is there any more to do? Can I expand this PowerPoint anymore? Well, my dad died when I was 19, and I never had the chance to sit down with him and actually talk to him about I mean, nobody expected him to pass away at 53. So At the time I started working and everything, I was 19, and he suddenly passed away. And so the thing I regret is I never sat down with him to actually talk to him about his war service. And like a lot of veterans, he never said very much about it. If you know a lot of veterans, they don't like to talk about what happened to them during the war.
Yeah.
So he only talked about, he told us very little bit. So that's why there are gaps in my PowerPoint that that I'll never get answers to. Like after he left, was he sent to the Philippines? He told some of my brothers he was sent to Australia. Others he said he was sent to the Philippines for recuperation. But again, I don't know. And he won the bronze medal, but we don't know what happened to it. Nobody in the family knows what happened to his medal. So there are a lot of unanswered questions. But that's why it took me 20 years to uh, to actually read books and do the research. I'm very big on military history, very big on military history. I read everything I can on all sorts of military history. So the idea I got is for this PowerPoint is I have my love of coin collecting, and I've also got a history with him, with the military side. So I managed to blend the two together and came out really good. But it took 20 years to and I still don't have all the answers. Now, the other question you had about those Japanese banknotes, the serial number 38, according to the catalog, they called them serial numbers. So I just went along with it. But I think that 38 was actually a plate number. Because I know, like some of the when they got to 1 yen, 5 yen, 10 yen, they actually put actual serial numbers along with the plate number. Whereas the earlier second series did not have any plate numbers on it; it was blank. So I think you're right. I think good observation. I believe that is a plate number, and then with the higher denominations, they put the serial number on it.
And also the serial numbers are way larger than this just 38, right? So it makes more sense to be a play number.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
And
Within the
actually,
parentheses.
you mentioned something that it's that was also a question that I had. All this documentation that you found, the POW index card and all this other information, is that you find all of that? Is that all on you? You find them online, something like that, or your dad has some kind of stash document somewhere, or what do I know?
Okay, the photographs of him being in a prisoner of war camp, he always had that. He always had that among his papers and everything. And he showed it to us at one time. That's how he was able to tell us, oh, I was only 80 pounds at this time, and we were allowed to bring 1 pound lump of a 1 pound lump of coal to the barracks to warm it up. And so he did tell us some things. But the interesting thing is, uh, after he died, I inherited all these photographs, which was just perfect for the PowerPoint. But the interesting thing is in 2008, in 2008, oh yeah, in 2008, that one picture of him sitting behind a goat, that was actually released by the widow of a Japanese photographer to a British newspaper in 2008, because according to the article, the widow released it only after the husband died because the husband took these pictures during the war and he was afraid of releasing them in case he was going to get persecuted for some or prosecuted for something. So he kept these pictures uh, secret until he died. Then the wife released them to the English newspaper. But my dad always had them.
Hmm.
So where he got them from, again, that's another mystery. Where did he get them
Anyway,
from?
I get
I
you.
don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. And the same line, how do you find out about the stolen parcel, the Red Cross parcel that were stolen from the POWs?
Oh, okay. When I first started to research and get the information after my dad passed away and everything, I tried to find information on the prisoner of war camps, Sendai Camp number 2. There was nothing on the internet, hardly any information. And then all of a sudden, it's like somebody declassified everything. About 10 years ago, suddenly all of this was uploaded to the internet. I managed to find information on every Japanese POW camp in Japan, in Hong Kong, in Tokyo. all over Japan. And they had rosters, they had pictures of the camp, they had the camp commandant's name. So it was like somebody took all this data and suddenly posted it. And so once that became available, I was able to build. That's where I got all the information about the camp, the pictures, and everything. It was amazing. The
Awesome.
internet just
Yeah.
blew up with all this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thanks again for your presentation. And
You're welcome.
Any other question, comment? I just have one note, Michael. As you know, our goal is to make 1,000 videos, and we are going strong to make that number. We typically have milestones. Our next milestone is the video number 888.
Oh, okay.
And it was decided that we are going to put it up for sale, and let's see who come up with that.
Somebody probably pay you for that. Yes.
But one thing with the number 8 is only on the Cantonese side of China, right? Because for Mandarin, do they care too much about number 8 or they don't?
I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm not
that's what I
sure
thought.
because for one thing, I don't speak Mandarin. I can barely speak Cantonese. I
Okay.
can't read. I can't read or write Chinese. By the way, I was born in Hong Kong, but I'm hopeless as a Chinese. I can't read or write, and so I don't know. I don't know as the Mandarin because bat is how you pronounce it. Eight
Yes.
in Cantonese is bat. How you pronounce it in Mandarin, I don't know.
Okay.
So I don't know if it had, but like you say, four is also bad luck, eh? Because four
Yes.
is
Yeah.
say, and it's synonymous with death.
Yeah.
So four is bad luck.
Okay. Okay. So when we put it up for sale, we go to Hong Kong and that area then.
Yeah, right.
the current bid is 888 cents.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a geolocation.
Yeah.
That's fine. Okay.
Now, is your group interested in concentration camp money?
Oh, I never knew that they had their own money.
German concentration camp. I've got a three-part. I got a three-part. Well, that one took me 400 hours of research.
Wow.
I didn't. Okay, I've been collecting coins and banknotes for about 60 years, since I was about 9 years old. I didn't know that concentration camps had their own money for the use for the inmates, by the inmates. It's only when in
Yeah.
Vancouver, at a museum, at one of the Jewish museums, somebody put out a collection of concentration camp money. And I ended up going to visit it with most of my club members, and they had a book. They had a book on concentration camp money, so I bought one, and I started doing research on it.
Huh.
It ended up being a 400-hour project, and I've got 3 half-hour presentations, and it covers 22 concentration camps and ghettos.
Well, that would be fantastic. Although our main topic is philately, we
Yeah,
would
that's right.
that would be a very interesting topic. We have a member here, if we can call him a member, one of the people who participate, like every one of us here, and his specialty is actually that part. He gave us presentation on mail from the different concentration camps and all
Yes.
that. So, Michael, I take you up on that offer. Maybe we schedule you. He's in Spain, so typically when we run those presentations would be on a weekend and during the day. So
Okay.
if that's okay with you, I guess that would be an interesting presentation. It won't count for our 1,000 goal of philatelic material, but as for context would be great.
Yeah.
I would love to know about that. I didn't even know.
Actually, I have a lot. Although I'll be honest with you, I'm not a serious stamp collector like you. I can't even call myself a stamp collector, okay? I collected Hong Kong stamps, and that was it because I'm from Hong Kong. And
Sure.
that's only from 1991 onwards. But I'm also involved with the BC Philatelic Society here in Vancouver,
Mm-hmm.
and I was made honorary member because I started creating philatelic PowerPoints for them.
Oh,
So I've got about if you're interested, I've got stamp quizzes, and they find them very interesting. They find it is educational, and that's all. It's a lot of fun. So if you
That,
want, I've got about 20 quizzes. If you want stamp quizzes, I've got. I tell you what, I will send you. Did I send you my list of PowerPoints,
I
Henry?
don't recall if you sent me that, but if you can send it over. And also, you know
Yeah.
what? I've been having problems with the email, so just email it to me. I can receive. And if you use WhatsApp, send me your WhatsApp there. Don't mention it here, otherwise they will cut us the video on YouTube. But just send that over, and and maybe we can communicate that way.
Well, I've got one that's called Operation Water Wave, which is the German counterfeiting of British stamps during the war for propaganda purposes.
Hmm.
It's only about half an hour long, but maybe what we could do is
Yeah.
could do that presentation, and I could throw in a quiz or something there on world stamps, and maybe we could do something like that.
That'd be great. Yeah, we'll definitely take it offline, and we'll schedule something.
Yeah,
Mauricio is
100%.
raising his hand right now.
Yeah.
Michael, since you mentioned that you collect Hong Kong, I always have had this question regarding the stamps, specifically of Hong Kong. The day after the handover, were the Hong Kong stamps with the portrait of the Queen still valid for a few days, or that's it stopped immediately and the Chinese had their stamps already ready to be used?
That I don't know, but all I know is that after a time, I think I'm not sure if the British stamps stopped right away. That I don't know. But I've seen covers in Vancouver where they got a bunch of Chinese Hong Kong stamps, but they also used the Queen Elizabeth stamp next to it. And
Oh,
it was like
interesting.
about a year later. So I'm not sure if that was legal even. But it did go through the system. And I
Mhm,
found it very strange that they would have Hong Kong stamps issued by the Chinese government, but then
mhm,
also a Queen Elizabeth stamp. But
mhm,
I know that all the old Hong Kong coins bearing the king and queen, they gather them all up and they melt them all down. It's still legal tender, but they make
mhm.
an effort to take it all out of circulation.
I see. That's very interesting. Thanks.
Nice.
Nice.
All right. Well, Michael, thank you very much for sharing that personal experience and the
Yeah.
context that you put to the
Oh,
presentation. Give us, a whole picture of a
well,
very difficult moment, I guess, in history, but
Mhm.
it,
well, I'm very
it,
proud.
it happens.
I'm very proud of the PowerPoint, and that's why the Canadian Numismatic Association gave me the award in 2018 for the best numismatic article of 2018 for this presentation. So
Congratulations for
thank
that.
you.
Fabulous. And with that, yeah.